Before I begin, let me ask you something. If you enjoy slow burn stories with mystery and psychological tension, take a second to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. I read every comment, and it helps this story reach the people who need to hear it. Now, let me tell you what happened. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 45 years old, a black woman who has lived long enough to believe that random days are rarely random at all. At the time, though, I didn't know that yet. I thought I was just going through another ordinary afternoon, the kind that blends into all the others, quiet and forgettable. It was a Tuesday. Gray sky. Cold, but not cold enough for snow. I had just finished my shift at the community clinic and stopped by a small cafe near the bus stop, the kind of place people go when they want to be alone but not lonely. I ordered a coffee I didn't really need and sat by the window, scrolling on my phone, half present in my own life. That's when I noticed her. She was standing just outside the cafe, struggling with the door. Older. Late 60s, maybe early 70s. Dark skin like mine, weathered by years that looked heavy rather than gentle. She carried 2 bags that were clearly too heavy for her arms, and every movement she made looked like it cost her something. People walked past her. No one stopped. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I'd learned to be careful. There's a quiet rule many women like me grow up with: don't involve yourself unless you have to. But something about the way she looked through the glass, confused, almost searching, made my chest tighten. I stood up. "Here," I said, pushing the door open. "Let me get that for you." She looked at me then. Really looked at me. Her eyes were sharp. Too sharp for someone who seemed so fragile. "Thank you," she said softly, but her voice didn't match her posture. It was steady. Grounded. Like someone who had survived things. I carried one of her bags to the bench outside and sat with her while she caught her breath. We talked the way strangers do, about the cold, about buses running late, about nothing important at all. She told me her name was Margaret, and I told her mine. She smiled when I said it, like the name meant something to her. That should have been my first warning. When her bus finally arrived, I stood up and handed her the bag. She took it, then paused, her hand still wrapped around the handle. Her grip tightened slightly. "Evelyn," she said quietly. "Yes." She leaned closer, close enough that I could smell soap and something medicinal, like hospitals and old memories. And that's when she said it. "You were kind today," she whispered. "So I'm going to return the favor." I laughed nervously. "You don't have to." "Listen to me," she interrupted gently. Not sharply. Gently. If someone comes to your door asking about the room you don't use, don't let them in. My smile faded. "I'm sorry," I said. She straightened up, her expression already shifting back into something harmless, something forgettable. The bus doors opened with a hiss behind her. "Some help isn't help," she said as she stepped onto the bus. "And some warnings only come once." The doors closed. The bus pulled away. And I was left standing there, holding a coffee gone cold, my heart beating just a little too fast for a random Tuesday afternoon. I told myself she was confused. Lonely. Saying strange things because that's what people do when they age and the world stops making sense. I told myself I'd forget about it by the time I got home. But here's the thing. I don't have an extra room. At least, I didn't think I did. If you're still watching, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from, because what I discovered that night made me realize that woman didn't just help me. She remembered something about my house that I had somehow forgotten. And that was only the beginning. Before we go any further, let me say this quickly: if you're still here, make sure you're subscribed, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What happens next is where this story stops feeling like coincidence. I walked home slower than usual that night. Margaret's words followed me the entire way, looping in my head no matter how hard I tried to push them aside. If someone comes to your door asking about the room you don't use, don't let them in. It didn't make sense. I lived alone. Had for years. My house was small, modest, familiar in the way routines become familiar when you repeat them long enough. Or at least, I thought it was. When I unlocked the front door, the house greeted me the way it always did, quiet, dim, untouched. I set my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and stood still in the entryway, listening. The silence felt normal. Too normal. I don't know how else to explain it. I moved through the living room, then the kitchen, flipping on lights as I went. Everything looked exactly the same. My couch. My photos. The plant I kept forgetting to water. No extra room. No mystery. I almost laughed at myself. That's when I noticed the hallway. I had walked past it every day without really seeing it. A narrow stretch between the bathroom and the back bedroom. At the end of it was a door I couldn't immediately place. Not new. Not old. Just overlooked. My chest tightened. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that door like it might blink back at me. I didn't remember locking it. I didn't remember unlocking it either. The doorknob was cool when I touched it, colder than the rest of the house. I didn't open it. Instead, I went to bed, telling myself I'd deal with it in the morning, when things looked less threatening in daylight. That's what responsible adults do, right? They postpone fear until it feels manageable. Sleep didn't come easily. Sometime after midnight, I woke to a sound that pulled me out of a dream I couldn't remember. A soft noise. Rhythmic. Almost polite. Knocking. Not on the front door. From inside the house. I sat up, heart racing, listening. The sound came again, 3 light taps, spaced evenly apart. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't frantic. It sounded patient. I slid out of bed and stood in the dark, my feet cold against the floor. The knocking came again, louder this time, unmistakably coming from the hallway. From behind that door. My first instinct was to call out. To ask who was there. But Margaret's voice surfaced in my mind, clear and sharp. Some warnings only come once. I stayed silent. The knocking stopped. And in that silence, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I wasn't afraid of someone breaking in. I was afraid of someone already being inside. If you're still watching, tap like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because I finally opened that door, and what I find makes me understand why Margaret looked at me the way she did. Before I tell you what happened next, pause for just a second. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. What I found behind that door is the moment this story stopped being something I could explain away. I stood in my bedroom doorway for a long time, barely breathing, listening to the silence settle back into the house. The knocking didn't return. No footsteps followed it. No sound at all. And somehow, that felt worse than if someone had been banging on the door non-stop. Silence gives your mind too much room to work. I told myself it was pipes. Old houses make noise. That's what people say when they don't want to dig deeper. I forced my legs to move, step by careful step, down the hallway. The floor creaked beneath me, every sound amplified by my nerves. The door waited at the end, exactly where it had been before, looking innocent. Ordinary. My hand hovered over the knob. I remember thinking how strange it was that I couldn't recall ever opening this door before. Not once. I'd lived in this house for 5 years. Cleaned it. Rearranged it. Walked these halls half asleep more times than I could count. And yet, the space behind this door had somehow slipped past my awareness like it didn't want to be remembered. I turned the knob. The door opened easily, without resistance, revealing a small room lit only by the glow of the hallway light behind me. It wasn't large. Barely big enough to be called a bedroom. No windows. No furniture, except for a single chair pushed against the far wall. And the smell. It hit me immediately, stale air mixed with something metallic, like old coins or blood long dried. I covered my mouth, fighting the urge to gag, and stepped inside. The walls were scuffed, marked with scratches that weren't random. They were too deliberate. Too consistent. Like someone had paced this room over and over again, dragging their fingers along the surface while they waited. For what, I didn't know. That's when I noticed the floor. Unlike the rest of the house, it wasn't hardwood or tile. It was concrete. Smooth in some places, cracked in others. And right in the center of the room was a square outline, faint but unmistakable. A hatch. My heart began to pound so hard I felt it in my throat. I backed out of the room and closed the door, leaning against it as if that could somehow erase what I'd just seen. I stood there shaking, telling myself I didn't have to investigate further. That I could call a contractor in the morning. Or sell the house. Or pretend I'd never noticed any of this. But curiosity is a quiet kind of cruelty. It doesn't scream. It whispers. I went back inside. I knelt down and ran my fingers along the edge of the hatch. Dust clung to my skin. The concrete felt colder here, almost damp. I tried lifting it, expecting resistance. It moved. Just enough to confirm it was real. A chill ran through me, sharp and immediate. Beneath the hatch, I could feel empty space. Depth. The kind that swallows light and sound. That's when I heard it again. Not knocking. Breathing. Slow. Shallow. Coming from below. I froze, every muscle in my body locking at once. The sound wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. Someone, or something, was down there, matching my stillness, waiting. I stood up so fast I nearly lost my balance, backing toward the door. My mind raced, scrambling for explanations that made sense. A trapped animal. A pipe. Anything that wasn't what my instincts were screaming at me. Then a voice drifted up from beneath the floor. Not a shout. Not a plea. Just a calm, measured sentence spoken as if the speaker had been waiting a very long time. Evelyn, it said softly. You weren't supposed to remember this room yet. I ran. I slammed the door behind me and didn't stop until I was locked in my bedroom, heart pounding, lungs burning. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 2:17 a.m. I had missed 3 calls. All from an unknown number. And 1 voicemail. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because I finally listened to that voicemail, and it explains exactly why Margaret warned me not to let anyone in. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the voicemail notification like it might explode if I touched it. My heart was still racing, my breath shallow and uneven, the echo of that voice from beneath the floor replaying in my head over and over again. You weren't supposed to remember this room yet. Yet. That single word kept clawing at me. With shaking fingers, I pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the room immediately, calm and steady, as if she had recorded the message while sitting comfortably somewhere safe. There was no panic in her tone. No urgency. That scared me more than anything else. Evelyn, she said, if you're listening to this, it means you didn't ignore me. That's good. It also means the house has noticed you again. My stomach dropped. You need to understand something, she continued. Some places don't forget the people who belong to them. And some people are only visitors in their own lives. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. When you were young, she said, there was a room you weren't meant to remember. Not because it was dangerous, but because it held a truth no one wanted you to carry. My chest tightened painfully. Images flickered behind my eyes, blurred, fragmented. A smaller version of myself standing in a hallway. A door closing. A hand pulling me away before I could look back. You were protected, Margaret went on. Or at least, that's what they told themselves. Protection and erasure look very similar when you're the one being erased. The voicemail crackled softly, like the recording itself was struggling to continue. If someone comes to your door asking about that room, she said, they won't be there to hurt you. They'll be there to finish what was started. The message ended. I sat there in silence, my heart pounding, my thoughts spiraling. I didn't know what frightened me more, the idea that someone might come looking for that room, or the realization that a part of my life had been sealed away without my consent. That's when the doorbell rang. Sharp. Sudden. Loud enough to make me jump. I stared at my bedroom door, frozen, listening as the sound echoed through the house. The doorbell rang again, slower this time, deliberate. Who would be at my door at 2:30 in the morning? I crept into the hallway, every step careful, my pulse roaring in my ears. The hallway door, the one hiding that forgotten room, stood closed and silent as I passed it. For a moment, I thought I heard movement behind it. I didn't stop. I reached the front door and peered through the peephole. A woman stood on my porch. She was younger than Margaret. Early 30s, maybe. Black, like me. Well-dressed, composed, holding a leather folder against her chest. She looked like someone you'd trust without thinking twice. She smiled when she sensed movement behind the door. I'm sorry to come so late, she said through the wood, her voice clear and polite. I'm here about the extra room in your house. My blood ran cold. I didn't answer. She waited. Then she added, softly, almost kindly, you don't use it anymore, do you? If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I stayed silent, my back pressed against the door, realizing Margaret hadn't just given me a warning. She'd given me a deadline. I didn't answer the door. I stood there with my back pressed against it, every muscle in my body locked, listening to my own heartbeat pound so loudly I was sure the woman on the porch could hear it. The leather folder shifted slightly as she adjusted her grip, the soft scrape of material against her coat somehow cutting through the silence inside the house. She waited without knocking again, without raising her voice, like someone who already knew time was on her side. Ms. Brooks, she said gently. Too gently. I don't want to alarm you. I just need to ask a few questions. How did she know my name? I held my breath, counting seconds, hoping she would leave if I stayed quiet long enough. Instead, I heard her step closer to the door, lowering her voice as if we were sharing a secret. It's about the room at the end of your hallway, she continued. The one with the concrete floor. My knees nearly gave out. The woman on the porch didn't sound threatening. She sounded professional. Controlled. Like someone trained to make people feel safe while taking something from them. I thought about Margaret's voicemail, about her warning that some people come not to hurt you, but to finish what was started. I'm not interested, I said finally, my voice barely steady. You have the wrong house. There was a pause. Then she smiled. I could hear it in her voice. No, she said softly. I don't. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Somewhere deeper in the house, behind the hallway door, something shifted. Not loudly. Just enough to make the floorboard sigh, like the house itself reacting to her presence. I can come back another time, the woman added. But you should know, the longer you keep that room closed, the harder it becomes to keep what's inside from noticing you. My throat tightened. Noticing me for what? She leaned closer to the door, her voice dropping to a whisper. For replacement. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my back still against the door, my hands trembling in my lap. The word echoed in my mind, heavy and wrong. Replacement implied something incomplete. Something missing. Something waiting to be swapped. I didn't come here to scare you, she said. I came because you were listed as unresolved. Unresolved. Like a problem no one had finished dealing with. I think you should leave, I said, louder now, forcing strength into my voice that I didn't feel. Another pause. Longer this time. Then I heard her step back. Her footsteps moved down the porch, slow and deliberate, until they stopped. I waited, holding my breath, listening for the sound of her leaving. The night outside was quiet. Too quiet. I'll be in touch, she said from somewhere I couldn't see. You always answer eventually. The porch creaked. Then nothing. I stayed there on the floor for several minutes, unable to move, until my legs went numb. When I finally stood, I locked the door, then checked it twice, my hands shaking as I slid the bolt into place. I moved through the house turning on every light, as if brightness could protect me from what had already been named. In the hallway, the door to the forgotten room stood exactly where it had been. Closed. Silent. But now, I knew it wasn't empty. I pressed my ear against the wood before I could stop myself. From the other side, I heard something that made my breath knowing and slow. A soft sound. Not breathing. Not knocking. Someone humming. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I realized then that ignoring the warning hadn't made it go away. It had just let it get closer. Before I go on, take a second to subscribe, leave a like, and tell me where you're watching from. If you're still here, you're already part of this story. The humming didn't stop when I stepped away from the door. It followed me down the hallway, low and steady, like a lullaby sung just out of tune. I tried to tell myself it was in my head, the residue of fear playing tricks on my senses. But the sound had rhythm. Intention. It rose and fell as if whoever, or whatever, was behind that door knew I was listening. I backed into the living room, every step careful, afraid that sudden movement might draw attention. The lights were all on now, glaring and unforgiving, stripping the house of shadows without making it feel any safer. I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, trying to decide what a reasonable person would do next. Call the police. Tell them what? That a stranger knew about a room I didn't remember, and something was humming behind a door in my hallway. I grabbed my phone anyway. My fingers hovered over the screen, indecisive, when a new notification appeared. A text. Unknown number. You don't have to open it tonight. But you can't pretend you didn't hear it. My stomach dropped. I typed back before I could stop myself. Who are you? The reply came almost immediately. Someone who made the wrong choice once. I sat down on the couch, the phone heavy in my hand. My mind raced, connecting dots I didn't want connected. Margaret. The woman on my porch. This voice in my phone. They weren't random. They were part of the same line, the same chain of decisions stretching back to something I'd been kept from seeing. The humming stopped. The silence that replaced it felt deliberate. I stood again, heart pounding, and walked back to the hallway. The door to the forgotten room looked unchanged, but the air around it felt different, thicker, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. I reached out, stopping just short of touching the handle. Please, I whispered, not sure who I was speaking to. I don't know what you want from me. There was a soft sound from the other side of the door. A shift. Then a voice, clearer than before, close enough that I could hear breath between words. "We want you to remember." The word landed hard. Remember what? My head began to ache, a deep pressure behind my eyes. Images flickered at the edges of my vision, brief, incomplete. A smaller hallway. A door like this one, but newer. Someone standing behind me, hands on my shoulders, telling me not to turn around. Telling me it was better this way. I stumbled back, clutching the wall. The phone buzzed again. "If you let them take it from you again, you won't get another warning." "Take what?" I whispered. The answer came not from the phone, but from behind the door. "Your place." The lights flickered. Just once. But it was enough. I knew then that this wasn't about a room. It was about space. About presence. About who gets to exist where the story ends. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I didn't sleep that night. And when morning came, the door at the end of the hallway was open. The door was open. Not wide. Just enough. A narrow gap, no more than a few inches, like someone had cracked it open to see if I was brave, or foolish, enough to notice. I stood at the far end of the hallway, staring at that sliver of darkness, my body refusing to move forward even as my mind screamed that this was the moment everything changed. The humming was gone. In its place was something worse. Stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel empty, but occupied. Like a room holding its breath. I took one slow step forward, then another, the floor creaking softly beneath my feet. The smell hit me before I reached the doorway, dust, old concrete, and something faintly familiar, like soap I remembered from childhood but couldn't place. I pushed the door open the rest of the way. The room looked exactly as it had the night before. Bare. Windowless. The single chair still pressed against the far wall. But now the concrete hatch in the floor was uncovered. The thin layer of dust I'd seen before had been disturbed, footprints circling it slowly, deliberately. My footprints. And another set. Smaller. Bare. My stomach twisted violently. I knelt down despite every instinct telling me not to. The hatch was fully visible now, the outline darker, more defined, like it had been waiting for permission. I pressed my palm against the concrete. It was warmer than the rest of the floor. Warm like skin. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I swear I didn't know." The house answered me. A low creak ran through the walls, traveling upward, then back down, settling around me like a sigh. I felt it then, not fear, not exactly, but recognition. The unsettling awareness that this place had always known me better than I knew myself. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from the unknown number. "They told you forgetting would keep you safe. They didn't tell you who it would leave behind." My vision blurred. Fragments pushed forward, no longer content to stay buried. A smaller version of myself standing in this room. Crying. Someone else crying too. Hands pulling me away while a voice, mine, but younger, called out, promising not to forget. And I had. I pressed my forehead to the floor, tears spilling freely now, my body shaking with the weight of it. The hatch beneath my hand vibrated faintly, responding, like a pulse. From below, a voice rose, not humming this time. Speaking. Clear. Calm. Familiar in a way that shattered me. "Evelyn," it said. "You came back." I couldn't breathe. "I didn't mean to leave you," I whispered. "I didn't understand." "I know," the voice replied gently. "That's why they chose you." The word landed like a verdict. Chose. Not spared. Not saved. Selected. The house groaned again, louder this time, the sound rolling through the structure as if something deep within it was waking up. I understood then that this wasn't just my memory returning. This was a balance being disturbed. A story that had been paused, not ended. If you're still listening, the voice continued, you still have a choice. My hands trembled as I pulled them back from the hatch. What kind of choice? I asked. The answer didn't come right away. Instead, I heard footsteps. From the hallway. Slow. Measured. Familiar. Someone else had entered the house. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding, knowing with absolute certainty that whatever choice I was about to face, it wouldn't belong to me alone. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. I didn't turn around right away. Some instinct deep in my chest told me that once I did, whatever fragile control I still had would disappear. The air in the room felt thicker now, heavier, pressing against my skin like humidity before a storm. I stayed where I was, standing over the open hatch, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Evelyn, a voice said behind me. It wasn't Margaret's. This voice was younger. Colder. Professional in the way people sound when they believe they're entitled to answers. I closed my eyes briefly, then turned. The woman from my porch stood in the doorway. Up close, she looked even more composed than she had the night before. Her coat was neatly pressed, her hair pulled back tightly, her expression calm but alert. She held the leather folder against her chest like a shield, or maybe like proof. Her eyes flicked past me immediately, landing on the open hatch in the floor. Her jaw tightened. So, she said quietly. You heard it. I didn't answer. She stepped into the room without waiting for permission, her shoes making soft, deliberate sounds against the concrete floor. She stopped a few feet away from the hatch, careful not to get too close, like someone approaching a wild animal they'd been warned about. You shouldn't be standing there, she said. It responds to familiarity. What responds? I asked, my voice hoarse. She looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was reassessing something she'd misjudged. You, she said. And what you represent. From beneath the floor, the vibration grew stronger, the concrete humming faintly beneath my feet. I could feel it in my bones now, a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat too closely to be coincidence. She remembers you, the woman said. That makes you dangerous. I laughed then, a short, broken sound. Dangerous to who? To the balance, she replied. To the agreement that kept this contained. The word agreement made my stomach turn. You mean the lie, I said. Her lips pressed together. I mean the solution. Before I could respond, the voice beneath the floor spoke again, stronger now, no longer tentative. She told you to leave me, it said. Didn't she? The woman stiffened. This is exactly why we don't let you speak, she snapped, the calm cracking just enough to reveal something sharp underneath. You let me disappear, the voice replied. That was easier. The room began to change. The walls creaked, the ceiling groaned, and dust drifted down in slow spirals. The house felt awake now, alert in a way it hadn't been before. I understood then that it wasn't choosing sides, it was responding to truth. To recognition. She doesn't belong here, the woman said to me, urgency creeping into her voice. You don't understand what you're risking. I understand enough, I said quietly. You didn't come here to help me. You came to make sure I stayed quiet. Her eyes hardened. We came to make sure only one of you remained, she said. The words landed like a blow. One upstairs, she continued. One below. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The vibration beneath my feet intensified, the hatch rattling softly now, no longer subtle. She doesn't want my life, I said, my voice shaking but steady. She wants to be known. That's the same thing, the woman snapped. Once she's known, she can't be contained. The voice beneath the floor softened. I don't want to replace you, it said. I want to exist. The room fell silent. In that silence, I realized something that made my chest ache with clarity. They weren't afraid of her hurting me. They were afraid of me remembering her. The woman took a step back, clutching the folder tighter. If you keep listening, she warned, you won't be able to go back to your life. I looked at the hatch. Then at the woman. Then at the doorway behind her, the hallway, the house, the life I'd been living on borrowed certainty. I don't think I ever really had one, I said. From beneath the floor, the voice spoke my name again. Not pleading. Inviting. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I stepped closer to the hatch, knowing the next choice wouldn't just change what I remembered. It would decide who was allowed to exist when the door finally closed. The room felt smaller the moment I stepped closer to the hatch. Not physically, emotionally. Like the air itself was tightening, pressing inward, forcing everything toward the center of the truth. The vibration beneath my feet grew stronger, no longer subtle, no longer patient. Whatever was below wasn't waiting anymore. It knew I had heard it. It knew I was listening. The woman by the door shifted her weight, her composure cracking just enough for me to see fear underneath it. You don't understand the consequences, she said, her voice sharper now. Once the separation fails, there's no way to restore it. I didn't take my eyes off the hatch. Separation, I repeated. That's what you call it. That's what it is, she insisted. A necessary boundary. Some lives cannot exist side by side. The words sounded rehearsed. Learned. Passed down. From beneath the floor, the voice responded calmly. They told you the same thing, didn't they? The woman flinched. Silence filled the room, heavy and revealing. The house creaked again, not angrily, but knowingly, like it had heard this conversation many times before, spoken by different voices, in different years. I crouched slowly, my knees aching as I lowered myself to the floor. The concrete was warm now, unmistakably so, like skin under a palm. I placed my hand flat against it and felt a steady pulse beneath my fingers. A heartbeat. I didn't choose this, I said quietly. Not then. Not now. The voice softened. I know, it said. That's why I waited. The woman took a step forward instinctively, then stopped herself, as if crossing an invisible line. Evelyn, she said urgently, you're not responsible for what happened. But you are responsible for what happens next. I looked up at her. That's exactly why I can't do what you're asking. Her expression hardened. What you're doing will unmake the structure, she warned. The house. The agreement. Everything that kept this contained. I nodded slowly. Maybe it shouldn't be contained. The vibration surged. A thin crack appeared along the edge of the hatch, dust lifting into the air as the concrete strained. The woman gasped, stumbling back a step, clutching the folder like it might protect her. Stop, she said. You don't know what you're inviting. I leaned closer to the floor. What happens, I asked the voice, if I let you out? There was a pause. Not hesitation. Care. I don't take your place, it said. I take my own. The crack widened. The house groaned loudly now, the sound rolling through the hallway, through the walls, up into the rooms above. Somewhere, a picture frame fell. Glass shattered. But I didn't move. I felt strangely calm. Whole in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. The woman's voice dropped, desperate now. If you do this, you can't go back to pretending. I met her eyes. I don't want to. The concrete shifted beneath my hands, and for the first time, fingers pressed upward from below, real, trembling, unmistakably human. They reached through the widening gap, brushing against my palm. I inhaled sharply, every nerve in my body screaming, but I didn't pull away. I held on. If you're still here, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. The house let out a long, shuddering sound. And somewhere deep inside it, something that had been waiting for years finally began to rise. Before I tell you how this ends, I want to ask you something quietly. If you're still here, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Not because it helps the algorithm, because stories like this only matter if they're witnessed. I held her hand. The moment our fingers locked, the house reacted, not violently, not angrily, but decisively. A deep sound rolled through the walls, through the foundation, through the floor beneath my knees, like something ancient finally exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The crack in the concrete widened just enough to let her pull herself free, not tearing, not breaking, releasing. Memory came back the way grief does. Slowly. Painfully. In pieces that finally made sense together. I remembered being small, standing in this room when it still had brighter paint and a door that closed too softly. I remembered being told not to look back, not to ask questions, not to cry. I remembered promises made between children who didn't know the cost of silence. I remembered forgetting, and how easy it had been to accept that forgetting is peace. She stood in front of me now, trembling, not younger, not older, timeless in the way unresolved things are. She didn't look angry. She didn't look vengeful. She looked relieved. The woman from the doorway took another step back, her certainty finally gone. The folder slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. This wasn't how it was supposed to end, she whispered. No, I said calmly. It's how it was supposed to begin. The house settled. Lights stopped flickering. The pressure lifted. The air changed, cleaner, lighter, like after a storm breaks but before the sun fully comes out. The crack in the floor sealed itself, not erasing what had happened, but closing properly, like a wound that had finally been acknowledged. She looked at me. I don't want your life, she said softly. I just wanted to be known. I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in my life, the quiet inside me wasn't empty. It was full. Balanced. We didn't stay. Some places don't trap you. They teach you. By morning, we were gone. I left the house unlocked. It didn't need to hold on to anything anymore. Its story had been seen. Heard. Finished. She lives with me now. Not as a replacement. Not as a shadow. As herself. Sometimes we sit in silence together, not because we have nothing to say, but because we finally don't have to rush away from the truth. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just stays. I never saw Margaret again. But sometimes, when I help a stranger on an ordinary day, I wonder how many warnings are walking past us quietly, waiting to be listened to. If this story stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because some warnings don't come to scare you. They come to make sure you don't disappear.